The lights hit hard, white, unflinching, the kind that makes every blink feel like confession. The audience hummed with that nervous, electric energy that only live television can summon. It wasn't just another political panel. This was the one. Obama on one end, calm and unreadable. Ivanka Trump on the other, immaculate, rehearsed. Her posture a statement of inherited poise. Cameras panned, applause faded, and the host barely finished the introduction before the tension settled in like fog. For a moment, they spoke past each other, measured civility wrapped around barbed differences. Ivanka leaned forward, the slightest smile touching her lips, that practiced blend of confidence and charm. "With all due respect," she said, voice smooth as glass, "some people talk about unity, others actually build it. My father didn't just make speeches, he made results." The line was crafted for headlines. She knew it. The host knew it. The crowd reacted with that awkward shuffle of half laughs and polite discomfort. Obama didn't move. Not a blink, not a twitch. His expression stayed soft, the kind that made even silence feel deliberate. He adjusted his mic as if to buy time, but he didn't need it. His eyes met hers, calm and cutting at once, the quiet authority of someone who's seen storms and never raised his voice to survive them. When he finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It wasn't long. It was 5 seconds that would slice through the moment like lightning through still air. "I guess," he said evenly. "We measure results a little differently." The words landed with a thud of truth that no studio lighting could soften. The audience went still, utterly still, as if sound itself had forgotten what to do next. Ivanka's smile faltered, just slightly, enough for cameras to catch what she wished they hadn't. The host blinked twice, searching for a segue that didn't exist. Even the technicians behind the glass stopped moving. It wasn't an outburst. It wasn't a debate. It was surgical. 5 seconds that said everything about grace, power, and the weight of earned experience. And as the moment lingered, unbroken, the world outside that studio began to take notice. Because no one in that room, not Ivanka, not the host, not even Obama himself, was ready for what came next. It wasn't just another night of punditry. It was the Leadership Forum, American Values 2025. A glossy stage built for sound bites and viral moments. The world was watching not out of curiosity but hunger. After years of culture wars and tribal headlines, people wanted to see which version of America would speak louder, the polished promise of the new conservative elite, or the quiet resilience of progressive ideals that refused to fade. Ivanka Trump embodied what she called refined conservatism, a rebrand of her family's ideology wrapped in civility, charm, and the language of empowerment. To her supporters, she was proof that power could look elegant. To her critics, she was its most dangerous disguise. Her team had primed social media for days, leaking behind-the-scenes photos, hinting she would challenge the old establishment. It wasn't subtle. This was a calculated test. Could image defeat legacy? Across from her sat Barack Obama, the reluctant returnee to the stage. He wasn't campaigning, selling, or defending. He was there to discuss what he called the American spirit under pressure. But the world didn't tune in for philosophy. They tuned in for sparks. Twitter feeds flickered with live threads. YouTube countdowns streamed side by side with partisan watch parties. Every camp had already chosen its hero and its villain. The conversation began cordially enough. Values, opportunity, the balance between individualism and responsibility. Yet beneath the surface, it wasn't dialogue. It was duel by decorum. Each smile was a strategy. Each phrase a trap. When Ivanka leaned in and spoke about real leadership being inherited through action, not words, half the internet roared approval while the other half rolled their eyes. Obama just nodded, the same way a mountain might nod to a breeze. And then, those 5 seconds. Calm, measured, unstoppable. Within minutes, the internet fractured. Some called it arrogance. Others, poetic justice. Clips spread faster than commentary could catch up. The numbers surged. Views, shares, outrage, awe. Because in that one unscripted moment, something rare had happened. The illusion of control slipped. And as both sides scrambled to claim victory, neither realized they'd just witnessed a shift that would redefine both of their names forever. For years, Ivanka Trump had mastered the art of distance, the kind that looked like dignity. She never shouted, never fumbled, never lost her smile. In a political world defined by chaos, she became the calm center of her family's storm. Her elegance was her armor, and every public appearance, every carefully worded statement was designed to suggest she stood above the noise. The world saw Pearl's posture and poise. Few looked closer. Her speeches often carried a certain practiced empathy, the kind that photographed well but rang hollow under scrutiny. She spoke of women's empowerment while defending policies that stripped funding from shelters. She tweeted about unity after rallies that fractured communities. She preached the importance of earning success, forgetting that her own path had been paved before she ever took a step. The contrast wasn't lost on the audience that night. It shimmered beneath every word she spoke. There was always that undertone. "I understand your struggle," she seemed to say, even as her world remained untouchable. Her brand of grace wasn't born from compassion but choreography. Every hair in place, every nod perfectly timed to seem humble without surrendering power. It worked for years. People wanted to believe she was different, softer, more rational than the empire she represented. She let them believe it, smiling gently as they did. But grace without empathy is theater, and theater eventually cracks. That night, under the searing lights of a live broadcast, the veneer began to shimmer. Not break yet, but tremble. When she invoked family values, it wasn't conviction, it was performance. When she mentioned service, it wasn't sacrifice, it was strategy. Obama listened, not just to her words, but to the rhythm beneath them, the entitlement woven through every syllable. He'd seen this before, the confidence of those who confuse comfort for merit, composure for depth. As she finished her sentence, the audience applauded lightly, unsure whether to agree or just admire the delivery. Ivanka leaned back serene, convinced she'd won the moment. But Obama didn't applaud. He didn't even blink. He simply tilted his head, studying her, not as an opponent, but as a symbol. Because behind that composure was a quiet arrogance, one he had seen before. Barack Obama had built his public life on the discipline of silence, the kind that listens longer than it speaks, that absorbs insult without letting it rot into anger. It wasn't weakness. It was strategy. From his earliest days on the campaign trail to the Oval Office itself, he learned that power wasn't in volume, but in control. Every pause, every smile, every deliberate breath carried the quiet authority of someone who understood that storms only matter to those who forget their passing. He had seen this dance before, the smirks, the interruptions, the soft-spoken condescension masked as civility. When you are calm in the face of provocation, the world often mistakes it for passivity. But those who knew him understood. Obama's calm wasn't surrender. It was preparation. His silence had edges. Flashback to 2008. The debate stage, the attacks, the whispers about his name, his faith, his heritage. "He doesn't love this country," they said. "He's not one of us." He smiled through it all, answered with composure so measured it unnerved his critics. He won, not by shouting louder, but by refusing to lower himself into the mud they invited him to. Flash to the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The laughter, the jabs, the billionaire in the front row who'd built a movement from mockery. Obama delivered his jokes, sharp and smooth, his cadence like music. The room roared. The billionaire glared. That night became legend, not because of the punchlines, but because of the restraint behind them. Even when he mocked, he never sneered. His wit never needed cruelty to cut. That same calm had carried him through the weight of crises, shootings, scandals, failures of faith in government. When voices around him shouted for vengeance, for outrage, he turned instead to empathy. He knew the cost of dignity in a world that rewards drama. He paid it anyway. So when Ivanka Trump spoke on that glittering stage, about legacy, about results, about the kind of leadership inherited rather than earned, he didn't see her as an adversary. He saw her as an echo of every entitled smirk that had ever told him he didn't belong in the room. And still, he smiled. The audience that night couldn't feel what he felt. They didn't know how many times he had bitten back a retort for the sake of something larger than ego. They hadn't seen the long nights of compromise, the bruises invisible to the camera lens. But they felt something stir, a collective memory of how this man, time and again, had turned condescension into composure, and composure into history. He adjusted his tie, that same steady gesture from 1,000 speeches past. His voice would not rise. His tone would not harden. But inside that calm was a reckoning, a lifetime of patience reaching its final test. Viewers leaned forward in their seats. Comment threads ignited. Even those who disagreed with him knew what was coming. The look, the silence, the perfectly chosen phrase that would dismantle arrogance with precision. It wasn't revenge he was preparing. It was balance, a simple reordering of energy, the universe correcting itself through one man's restraint. Every insult he'd ever absorbed, every cheap shot, every forced smile, it all condensed into that moment under studio lights. He took a breath, slow and measured. And in that breath lived every ounce of experience, every echo of discipline that had defined his journey, all of it leading inevitably to one 5-second reply that would leave a legacy echoing long after the applause. The air in the studio had changed, subtly at first, then unmistakably. Applause had faded into an uneasy hush, the kind of silence that only exists when everyone senses something about to break. Ivanka's tone sharpened, each sentence clipped with precision. A velvet sheath wrapped around steel. "I think," she began, her voice soft but carrying the weight of superiority. "The problem with leadership today is that some people mistake eloquence for effectiveness. America doesn't need another lecture, it needs results." It was a perfect jab. Scripted to sound thoughtful, designed to wound. The host smiled tightly, unsure whether to interrupt or let the drama play out. Cameras zoomed in. A murmur rolled through the crowd, a mix of stifled laughs and sympathetic gasps. Somewhere in the back row, someone whispered, "She really said that?" Obama didn't flinch. He didn't even shift in his seat. He simply leaned back, the faintest smile curving his lips, eyes fixed on her, not angry, not amused, just present. It was the same look that once made senators falter mid-sentence and opponents lose their rhythm. A calm so complete it became its own kind of power. The moderator glanced nervously between them. "President Obama, would you like to respond?" He didn't answer right away. The pause stretched. You could hear the hum of studio lights, the rustle of someone's notepad, the faint creak of a chair in the audience. Ivanka crossed her legs, her confidence returning, mistaking his silence for surrender. "I mean," she added lightly, "there's a reason some administrations inspire speeches and others inspire progress." That was the moment. A collective intake of breath. Even the technicians behind the glass leaned closer to their monitors. Obama inhaled once, slowly, deliberately. His eyes softened, not with warmth, but with clarity. When he spoke, it was quiet enough that the microphones had to lean in for him. 9 words. No anger, no flourish, no theatrics. Just truth, delivered with the precision of someone who'd been holding it for years. And in that instant, every conversation, every pre-written headline, every smug certainty in the room froze in place. Then, with millions watching, Obama spoke just 9 words that would echo across America. Obama's gaze didn't waver. His hands rested lightly on the table, fingertips touching, the faintest rhythm of composure tapping beneath them. The lights hummed overhead. The audience leaned forward as though gravity itself had shifted toward him. For a heartbeat, the entire room seemed to forget to breathe. Then he spoke. Quiet, deliberate. Every syllable measured like it had been waiting its entire life to exist. "Real strength," he said, "doesn't need a last name to matter." The words floated into the air, soft, unforced, devastating. They hung there, weightless yet heavy enough to bend the silence around them. 5 seconds. That's all it took. The kind of silence that doesn't follow noise but replaces it. Ivanka blinked. Once, twice. The practiced elegance cracked. Not broken, but fissured. Her lips parted as though to respond, but no words came. She straightened in her chair, smiled tightly, trying to recover, but her eyes betrayed the flicker of uncertainty. Cameras zoomed in. The red tally light above them glowed like a pulse. In the crowd, someone exhaled audibly. Another let out a stunned chuckle. The moderator glanced from one to the other, torn between keeping order and letting history unfold. Even the production crew behind the glass had stopped moving, hands frozen over controls, watching through soundproof glass as if the broadcast had turned into something more than television. Obama didn't press his advantage. He didn't smirk, didn't gloat. He simply leaned back, eyes steady, expression unreadable. The moment didn't need explanation. It was already complete. His stillness was the punctuation mark. 5 seconds stretched into 15, then 30. The applause didn't come immediately. It had to be earned. And when it finally did, it began as a murmur, rising slowly, wave by wave, until the studio filled with the unmistakable sound of recognition. Not for a performance, but for truth. Online, the reaction hit instantly. Twitter exploded, clips posted within minutes. Captions like, "Obama just ended entitlement in 5 seconds flat," and that silence was louder than any speech. Hashtags trended across continents. Yeah, 5 seconds, real strength, yeah, Obama moment. TikToks replayed the clip in slow motion, dissecting every micro-expression. Commentators from both sides scrambled to react, some praising his composure, others calling it condescending, but all admitting one thing: the moment was unforgettable. CNN replayed it before the credits rolled. MSNBC called it a masterclass in restraint. Even Fox hosts, mid-laugh, paused just long enough for the clip to fill the screen before moving on uneasily. Political podcasts dropped emergency episodes. Late-night shows rewrote monologues. In living rooms across the country, families replayed the exchange on glowing screens, the words echoing through kitchens and phone speakers. Real strength doesn't need a last name to matter. Parents nodded. Students quoted it in group chats. Even some of her supporters had to admit there was something haunting about that line. Back in the studio, Ivanka finally found her words. "That's poetic," she said, forcing a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. Obama smiled politely, the kind of smile that ends conversations without saying so. The moderator hurried to pivot, but the air had already changed. The stage no longer belonged to her. It didn't belong to him either. It belonged to the silence between them, the silence that told the truth better than any argument could. And as the applause finally settled, as the lights dimmed just slightly for a commercial break, the feeling lingered. Something irreversible had just happened. What followed in the next 24 hours was nothing short of a digital earthquake. By the time the broadcast cut to commercial, the clip had already escaped the studio. Within minutes, it was everywhere. Looped, shared, dissected, remixed. The moment spread like static in a thunderstorm. One 5-second reply had turned into a cultural detonation. Obama's silence trended first, then a 5-second reply. Within an hour, Suga Real Strength was the #1 tag on every platform. TikTok creators slowed the footage, adding cinematic music under Obama's voice. Twitter lit up with split-screen memes. Obama calm and composed on one side, Ivanka mid-blink on the other. 5 seconds of peace in a 5-year storm, one tweet read, racking up 500,000 likes before midnight. Commentators scrambled to keep up. CNN called it a masterclass in emotional intelligence. MSNBC dubbed it the new Gettysburg Address, shorter, sharper, and perfectly timed. Even Fox News, uncharacteristically quiet, spent the next morning debating whether it had been disrespect or discipline. The line blurred, as it always does when truth feels too calm to attack. Late-night hosts joined the chorus. 5 seconds, one joked, and somewhere an entire PR team just resigned. Studio audiences roared. Newsweek ran a digital cover titled "The Power of Stillness," showing Obama's side profile under a halo of studio light. Opinion columns flooded in, some calling it petty brilliance, others calling it grace disguised as precision. But the loudest reactions came from ordinary people. Teachers posted that they played the clip in class to discuss composure as leadership. Veterans wrote about strength without shouting. Even younger viewers, raised on speed and spectacle, seemed to recognize something rare, a kind of moral clarity untouched by noise. The line became more than a quote. It became a shorthand, a reminder that maybe, just maybe, the measure of a leader isn't in their volume, but in the gravity of their calm. And as the digital storm swelled, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about a comeback or a clapback. It had become a referendum on how America defines dignity itself. Yet beneath the memes and headlines, a deeper question was forming, one that would linger long after the laughter faded. Because the real story wasn't what he said. It was why it mattered so deeply. In a world that mistakes noise for influence, Obama's 5-second reply landed like a quiet sermon. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a correction. A reminder that strength doesn't shout and truth doesn't need to trend to matter. That night, analysts would argue about policy, tone, optics. But outside the bubble of punditry, people felt something simpler, a kind of relief. For one fleeting moment, a public figure had chosen grace over ego, thought over thunder. It felt different. It felt human. Obama had built his career on that foundation. Not flawless, not infallible, but grounded in an almost stubborn belief that decency still counts. Through jeers, through headlines that twisted his calm into weakness, he never traded humility for attention. And now, years later, that same steadiness had spoken louder than any campaign slogan or viral rant ever could. Because leadership in its truest form is not about who can command the room, it's about who can calm it. His words that night weren't meant to humiliate or dominate. They were meant to remind. Dignity isn't silence, it's power restrained by purpose. Ivanka's smirk, the studio's hush, the internet's explosion, they all became part of the same story. Not of victory, but of contrast. The difference between polish and principle, between appearance and authenticity. And as the replayed clip faded into digital memory, a single truth lingered in the collective mind. The loudest voices may win headlines, but the calmest win history. Because real leadership, the kind that endures, doesn't come from those who demand the final word. It comes from those who speak when it matters and stop when it's enough. And for a generation raised on noise, notifications, outrage, endless performance, those 5 seconds felt like oxygen. A pause. A chance to remember that stillness is not surrender, and that silence, when grounded in conviction, can move nations. 5 seconds, one sentence, a ripple that became a reckoning. When dignity spoke, power listened. And for the first time in a long while, America did too. There's a reason that moment keeps replaying, not just on screens, but in hearts. Because beneath the politics, beneath the spectacle, it reminded us that composure is not weakness, and dignity is not outdated. In an age where shouting matches drown out meaning, one calm voice still cut through the noise. Maybe that's what people were really responding to, not just Obama's words, but the reflection of something we've all been missing. A reminder that integrity, patience, and restraint are not relics of the past. They're the foundations of real power. The truth is, not everyone will stand on a debate stage. Not everyone will have millions watching when they choose their words. But every one of us, in small moments, in boardrooms, classrooms, kitchen tables, and comment threads, faces our own 5-second test. The choice to react or respond, to escalate or elevate. Maybe we can't all be presidents, but we can all choose grace, and that choice matters more now than ever. Because the story of America, and of every democracy, is not written by those who yell the loudest. It's written by those who stay steady when the volume rises. If you believe dignity is strength, share this story. Keep it alive. Let it remind others that power isn't measured in decibels, but in decency. Subscribe, not just to this channel, but to a way of thinking that values truth over theater and empathy over ego. Because what happened in that studio wasn't just a viral moment, it was a mirror. It showed us who we could be if we chose restraint over rage, wisdom over winning, and unity over division. So the next time the noise feels deafening, Remember this, sometimes the quietest moments carry the loudest meaning. 5 seconds, one truth. A reminder that composure can still conquer chaos. And as the lights dim and the credits roll, let one line linger, a whisper, an echo, a promise. Because sometimes, 5 seconds of truth can echo for decades.